So I'm a big fan of diversity and inclusion and making sure that we have a steady dose of that. And for no reason other than the one I'm going to tell you about. And I realize there are many important reasons that are far better than this, both in terms of the values that we have, the morals and the values that we have, and what we want to honor. But um, when I was growing up, so my parents were not wealthy at all. Our big trip, my parents owned a small cabin, one room cabin in the woods, and our big trip was going to that cabin and driving there, and it was a half an hour away. But um, what I wanted to talk about was when I was growing up. So my dad was a Polish immigrant. Escaped um, Germany just before the Second World War. Um, and we lived on and my mom was, she was French Canadian, but her grandma was an orphan, so she didn't have a lot of the sort of culture that you might think about that was built into her. But um, when I was growing up, we mostly did meat and potatoes every single night. Boiled potatoes, cabbage sometimes, and some form of meat, whatever that might be. It was usually like fried in a frying pan. Every single night, boiled potatoes. Every single night, boiled potatoes. And I did that for my entire life until I moved away. And that's what we had, boiled potatoes. Never had rice, never had pasta, never had anything other than boiled potatoes and some form of meat. And to this day, when I moved away, to this day, I have not ate a boiled potato. And the reason is that I had it so much and I had it so every day. Everything was consistent with that I cannot stand boiled potatoes. And I eat everything else. Rice, I'll have mashed potatoes. I will have fried potatoes. I will have curry. I will have all sorts of varieties of food, which I never tried until I moved away. None of those foods I tried until I moved away, other than you, fried potatoes, anything potatoes. And um, it was such a strange experience for me to go through that. I went from one of these moments that were, or one of these sort of special places where everything was sort of consistent. Um, and we had the same thing to going away where everything was different. I moved to a university. The university I went to is when I moved away was very, very multicultural. And it was such an interesting experience when I went away and I tried all these kinds of different foods I never even heard of or never even seen from all sorts of different cultures. And it turns out I really like them. It turns out it was just a really wonderful experience. And um, I think this is a perfect analogy in terms of what you experience when you go through this, and why diversity and inclusion is important. Is that when you're in a situation and you have only one thing, meat and potatoes, you don't realize that there's a bigger world that's out there. You don't realize that there's all these kind of foods that you actually like. You don't realize that yes, sometimes you'll eat something in this sort of crazy world, like chicken's feet, which I still don't like today, but I've tried them. When you try those things, they're they can be not very great, but damn it, I really love having different versions of Thai curry, and they're just delicious. Um, I want I want to sort of think about that in terms of you know what you don't realize is that there's just a great deal of really interesting, delicious things, amazing things that are out there that we can be embracing. And you'll never know until you actually stop eating meat and potatoes. And when you do that, um, you'll realize every once in a while it won't be something will happen that you won't be comfortable with, right? And that definitely happens. It happens in all parts of walks of life. But often what you'll run into is having one dish or one thing that is so amazing that you would never think about, or even having a diaspora, a whole bunch of things that you would never think about to try and to sample, that your life is just unbelievably better by doing that. And sometimes it's really interesting to investigate how the flavors of food got to where they were, and the stories that are told behind the flavors of food got to where they were are far different than one would ever um, imagine, and they come from different ways of. Sometimes it's not so great, right? The stories that you hear are not so great, and they don't make you feel proud, and they don't make you feel good inside. Um, but those stories of how the foods got to where they were, often have such interesting backgrounds that you just want to listen to it. You want to hear it. You want to understand why they are the way they are. And I think that's the important thing with diversity and inclusion is understanding what makes people so delicious. Um, what makes foods around the world so delicious? What makes different cultures so delicious? Um, there's all sorts of different things that are out there that you'll never be exposed to, and you'll never run into until you start being exposed to them, and you're running into them, and you're experiencing those different things. And I think we need to really think about that. Why do we actually want diversity and inclusion? Yes, there are many noble reasons, but for me, I don't want my life to go back to meat and potatoes again. I don't know if you know what it's like to eat meat and potatoes, boiled potatoes every day, um, when you don't like them. Life is not very fun when it's like that. You have a lot more excitement and interestingness and stories to tell and just all sorts of different things when you start eating all of those wonderful foods around the world and meeting all of the wonderful stories that are behind it and understanding the challenges and difficulties and often challenges and difficulties that you or the group that you were part of experienced. And I think it's understanding, unraveling, viewing the world in these very different colors just really is a wonderful thing. And I think that's why I truly value diversity and inclusion, is because you get to see and sample and try and explore and just be immersed of so many different things beyond meat and potatoes.